There you go. And welcome back to another episode of the Device Diaries. Oh my gosh, you guys, today is episode 25. All right. And I'm so excited. And Gaida barely works on the weekend, but I really, really want you guys to hear about my guest story because I was so inspired by her. And I'm gonna let her talk about like how we met, how we even got connected. It's like literally the freaking universe, right? Like sending you the coolest people, sending you like I believe in like attracts like. So today's episode is episode 25. My name is Gaida Loveras, and I'm your host. And I titled today's episode From Sales to Coaching. All right. My guest today is the one and the only Kat Hurd. Welcome to the show, Kat Hurd.
Thank you, Gaida. I am so happy to be here, and I am totally aligned with you. I love the kismet with which we met and how we are here on a Sunday because, I feel like everyone needs to know that Gaida and I just actually connected on Friday. Like we talked Friday afternoon and we were like, hold on, we need to talk. Well, like we need to talk through this together. And here we are on a Sunday. I'm super pumped to be having this conversation. And honestly, I just have to say, I love what you're doing with the Device Diaries because it's so needed to have these conversations and not have them be scripted and not it corporate sponsored, but really rep to rep, investing in yourself, learning, growing, and figuring out what can you do to be better.
Oh my gosh, girl. Okay. So, just to give you guys a little background of how her and I met, it's literally like it's LinkedIn. Okay. LinkedIn is so special and so powerful. And I feel like this year, Kat, like I wrote down on my freaking like what's your why? And the first word that came out is women. Like I want to inspire other women. I want to empower women. And then all of a sudden, all these wonderful, powerful women start coming into my lives. I mean, talk about the universe.
Be careful what you wish for, right?
Right, which is awesome. And then I remember like seeing you. I'm like, okay, there's something I didn't even know you live in Arizona, which is even more special. So, so I want to start by asking this question: who is Kat Hurd?
Ooh, well, girl, how much time do we have, right? Yeah. So, who is Kat Hurd and why is this conversation relevant? So if you're in your car listening, if you're with us on Instagram Live right now, you're obviously tied into the medical device world. Maybe you're here in Phoenix. Hopefully you are spread somewhere wonderful across the country. So I started my career in medical device sales on the clinical side. So I moved to Arizona, sight unseen. So probably like many of you, I was so hungry to get into device sales. And I was willing to uproot my life and my world and start from scratch. So I moved from Iowa City, Iowa, go Hawkeyes. I'm wearing an Iowa sweatshirt, love the Midwest. And I said, I will go anywhere. And they had 2 openings in Arizona. And Gaida, you can appreciate this. They had Phoenix and Tucson. So actually my first time to Arizona, I flew to Tucson. And I interviewed down there and they said, we'd love to bring you on. We'll give you a choice. And so I chose Phoenix because it was bigger and I had never been to Arizona other than my interview. So all of that to say, I started my career 15 years ago as a clinical specialist, rose very quickly through the ranks, was a very successful territory manager, finished rep of the year, moved into leadership, ended my career at the VP level, and then decided, okay, this is great, but why not just blow it all up? Because Gaida, what you mentioned at the start, which is women, right? So for me, now I work with men too. So the men listening to this, I don't want you to feel like you need to press the stop button and not be part of this conversation. But the reality is for us women in medical device, on the leader side, there's not always women in that C-suite or even in those executive level roles. And the structure and the infrastructure isn't really built for us and for our world. And so we're having to fit a square puzzle piece into a rectangular hole. So it works, but it's not the perfect fit, right? So we're not talking squares and circles. We know those don't work, but we're talking, how do we have the resources, the insight, the guidance for all of the women in med device to make sure that we get women into leadership? Because there's this broken rung phenomenon, right? Of like getting women into that first leadership role is the biggest challenge. And then of course, because the leader pipeline is smaller, there's less women in leadership at those more senior levels. So I blew up my career at the start of 2024 and said, I've had it on my heart for over a decade to really help women in medical device sales and leadership. And that is what I do now. So I coach, I consult, I work directly guided with women like you who are just thriving in their sales career, with early career stage leaders, with seasoned leaders who are really looking to figure out how to take their executive presence and their careers to the next level. And yeah, through the whole phase of medical device sales and leadership.
Oh my gosh. So I love listening to your story. I love that you took us through like Tucson and like covering this and doing this. Cause I feel like, and I want to stress this. And again, like, I don't want to be like, oh, women, woo, like we all struggle, right?
Yeah.
Sales is sales, like men or women. But I feel like, and there's a lot of women that are struggling right now because they message me on LinkedIn all the time. So I love how special your story is, and you talk about like, I mean, talk about thinking outside of the box, right? And you really want to stress this, and that's why I titled this episode "From Sales to Coaching." How did you get from I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get up the corporate ladder. I did everything I can, but now it's time to give back. Like, what was that shift of mindset for you? Like, how did that even happen?
Yeah, it's gosh, it's something that just really happened over time. I think the challenge in our careers, and I see this in the people that I work with, women especially, is that we're always waiting almost for someone to give us the nod that like, okay, now's the time, like you may proceed. The reality is we have to be that nod for ourselves. And so, over time, what I realized about my career, especially once I moved into leadership, was I loved having my team be successful. But the thing I loved most was helping people grow their careers and find their own success, really understand, wow, like the power that they had within to step into their roles. I had a lot of people that I helped grow, from clinical specialist to territory manager, from territory manager with knowing nothing about their business to, I had one rep who finished second in the country. Many President's Club reps. I mean, as a manager, I had 3 back-to-back President's Clubs, which is just really unheard of. Because the hardest part about management that no one tells you is that you're no longer the one driving the revenue forward, right? You're the one motivating and inspiring. And I just really found that I loved it. And so to go back to your question of why make the move to coaching, what I realized once I was in that VP level role, I had less ability to pull other women with me. I could influence broader policy. I could make changes. Like my last company, we went from 4 weeks maternity leave to 12 weeks. No, 12 weeks maternity leave, fully paid, or 6 months at 50% pay, which is just phenomenal, right? From a change standpoint. But I wasn't able to have that day-to-day influence and impact on people's careers that I really loved and that I knew was helping people change their financial freedom, their futures, right? The runway ahead of them. Because yes, money doesn't buy happiness, but money gives us freedom. It allows us to make choices, and it allows us to make choices that take and change not just our worlds, but the worlds of our families and the communities around us. So when I looked at it, I thought, all right, I was at a startup most recently, and I had told myself, okay, 3 years, and then I'm really going to decide, is it time to make that leap, or what do I do? And I looked at it, and I had done what I went to do there. And we built the US sales force. We scaled from a team of, I had 2 people when I started. There were more than 70 people in my area when I left. And I thought, okay, so I've done it. Now what's next? And my options were go do it again someplace else, because that's what sales is, right? It's not just a rinse and repeat. You always have to ideate and find new ways to innovate. But I was either going to go do it someplace else, and I could only influence the careers of those people that I was directly connected to, or I could go for broke and look to do it on a broader scale. And I make decisions based on fear. And what I mean by that is I want to go what feels the most scary and uncomfortable, because what I know, and I know you're shaking your head, so you know this, that's where the growth is. And I thought, what am I going to regret more when I'm 80? Hell, what am I going to regret more in 10 years? And that's if I didn't make this leap and really lean into the fact that there's an opportunity right now for so many women to elevate their careers. They just need the right resources and support.
Oh my gosh, I mean, you're giving me goosebumps. And it's so rare for me to get goosebumps because I'm like overachiever, you know, and I love this. And that's why I wanted to do this on a Sunday. That's why I want to interview her right away, because I really want you guys to understand what we're talking about here. This is not something we made up. This is not something that's made up. This is not something that I'm literally, I talk about this all the time, and hearing it from you even validates it more. Okay. So, Kat, I want you to walk us back because I really want to hear your story. All right. So before you landed your career as a med device rep, like what were you doing? Like what even got you into the industry? And like why did you pick sales? Because I know having a clinical background, clinical and sales is completely different, right?
Yeah.
So like what got you really like passionate about it? And how did you, I know, because I talk to a lot of clinical people, how do you bridge the gap between the clinical and the sales?
Oh, girl, we're going to need a whole nother podcast for that, because that in itself is, that is a beast, right? And that's a lot of what I lean into with my clients. But so my story is very non-traditional. So my background is sports medicine. Okay. I was finishing my master's at the University of Iowa when I just looked at it and said, okay, what am I going to go do? And I could have been an athletic trainer. So I was taping ankles. I was rehabbing injuries. I worked with the Iowa women's volleyball team. And I thought, all right, this could be it, but what is that getting me? And athletic trainers as a lifestyle, it's pretty similar to medical device. And what I mean by that is they are at the whim and the whimsy of their teams, their athletes, the coaches that they work with. You don't have a whole lot of autonomy and control on your schedule. And we all know as med device reps, that's the life that you live, right? You live based on your case schedule, based on the days that your surgeon operates. Like those are days you're working, which if they're operating on a Sunday, I mean, I can't tell you how many Christmas Eves, New Year's Eves in the OR till midnight. So that definitely translated. And I had a good girlfriend, one of my roommates from college, from undergraduate, who was in medical device sales. So she had broken in also based off of her athletic training and sports medicine background. And so I started talking to her, and she made a few introductions for me. And I thought, you know, I grew up in a healthcare family. My mom's a nurse. She ran medical clinics. Like, I mean, I grew up like when I would leave school, like when I was in high school, I would go to my mom's clinic and I would like, I don't know, just like sit and do data entry. Sometimes I would sit in the pharma rep lunches. And so I knew the language and the lingo. And it really, for me, came down to opportunity. Right. And really, what was that long run opportunity going to be? And I knew with athletic training, unfortunately, it's a wonderful profession, but it is so underpaid. So I was making like $30,000, $35,000 with my master's degree. And I thought, okay, is this really it? And I connected with Hap Peterson, who at the time was the area vice president for the Western US at Boston Scientific. And I met with him. And I kid you not, I met with him like in a restaurant. It was one of those restaurants, like the Italian places that put paper on the tables and like give you crayons. And so he takes a pen out and he starts scribbling. He's talking about like anodes and cathodes, which my neuromodulation folks will understand, and starts talking about all of these things. And all I knew before I walked into that lunch was he worked at Boston Scientific. Now we know Boston Scientific has so many divisions. I was like, I don't even know how to figure this out. So what I recognized in that moment, and to get back to your question of like, how did I land into med device and why did I make these decisions? What I saw in him was this passion for helping people, and not just helping the patients on the other end, which I did in my life as an athletic trainer, helping the athletes, but helping the people on his team and seeing the, again, financial freedom that they could have with a strongly performing territory when you work hard and do the right things, and the opportunity for those two to coalesce to have, you know, high earning potential. You got to work for it, but it's there. and the opportunity to have a really high community impact. And I thought, okay, cool, sign me up. Like, this is it. And as we all know, luck is really when opportunity and timing meet. And so I did. A month later, I kept following up with him. And a month later, he emailed me and said, hey, what about Arizona? We have 2 positions open. Can you get there next week to interview? And so I got on an airplane, and, I'll share you all the interview stories, but I did. I moved down with 2 suitcases, just rolled onto the airplane and thought, all right, here we go. I think it's hot in Arizona.
I think it's hot in Arizona. It is hot.
And the spoiler is, it is hot in Arizona.
I love that story. That's so amazing, because I feel like, and again, we talk about this, and I remember you and I talking this past Friday about, like, our journeys, our passion, what got us into it. And I can't tell you, Kat, how many clinical people would reach out to me and say, like, hey, Gaida, how do I transition into sales? Okay, Kat. So I want you to drop like a bomb right now and say, like, if you can give them 3 things of, like, how do you get a clinical person transition into sales? Like, what would you tell them?
Yeah. So it's funny, because when I interviewed, the first thing they said to me is, we don't want a clinical person that wants to get into sales. And so I said, cool, no problem. I don't want to get into sales. And now I want to be clear too. I wasn't lying in that interview, because I just wanted into medical device. I was like, this is so cool. And, like, I get to be in the OR. That's amazing. So, but what I quickly realized once I got into it was the opportunity to have an impact and to really influence what the geography looked like and how you were helping patients really comes when you move into sales, right? Obviously, that's also where the earning potential is. But the reality is, you can be a clinical and med device in many of these specialties and live a very great lifestyle and make really great money. So I don't want folks that are in clinical to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to be moving into sales. If you love clinical and you love the patient support and you don't like to have numbers, then stay in that clinical world. You can grow, you can do so many wonderful dynamic things, and we could have a whole nother conversation about that. But to your question, if you're in a clinical role, it's a great way to break in, right? You don't know the industry. And if you don't have sales experience, which I didn't, I just had clinical experience of working with athletes, working with physicians. And if you don't have sales experience, it's a great way to get started. Now, how you make that transition, you have to come in and be a student of the game. If you aren't hungry and hopping for every learning opportunity, and that means being the absolute product master when it comes to the clinical side of things, knowing your business, knowing what your customers need, beginning to be able to predict that. That's so valuable, right? So step 1 is student of the game. If you aren't a sponge, if you're not really going to commit yourself to learning every little nuanced piece of information, then we should probably help you find a new industry. And that's okay, right? This isn't for everyone. So that's step 1. Step 2 is taking as much as you can off of your territory manager's plate that you're partnering with. And the reason for that, it goes back into step 1, which is that allows you to be a student of the game. You're going to learn things. If you do that, we always joke about job descriptions with the other duties as assigned. If you go in and don't say, oh, well, I don't do that, I'm not a clinical, or I don't get paid to do that. Take that out of your vernacular. That is not okay. That's not going to get you where you want to go. If you go in and say, hey, how do I help you with this? How do we talk about the patient pipeline? What can I do here? Can I do X, Y, and Z? You learn so much more, but then you also start to step in and both learn the business and make yourself this really just irreplaceable member of the team. And when you contribute value in that way, your territory manager and your manager will not only recognize that, but you learn the business pieces that will allow you to advocate for yourself in growing your career. And that's step 3, which is you have to advocate for yourself. Because if you don't say, I want this and I want an opportunity, but you've got to build the body of work before you go and say, I want to be a salesperson. Because I can't tell you as a leader how many people I've had come to me and say, I want to be a TM. Like, show me how you've been a TM before. You have to do the role before you get into the role. And I don't mean that in a way that you're working for free, but if you haven't demonstrated the ability to influence and impact people's behaviors and the success of the business, then it's really hard to talk about moving from clinical to sales. Now, on the other side of that coin, if you aren't clearly sharing and advocating for yourself about the value that you are bringing, it may go unnoticed. And so you can't expect someone to just tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, it's time for promotion. You want to be really clear about having those conversations, advocating for yourself early, and being very transparent and direct in what your ask is. And the biggest thing, and this is like, we can call it like 3B or like 3.5, right? So we don't go into 4 steps, but you have to ask for feedback, because you're probably going to go to your manager and say, I want to be a sales rep. And they're going to say, thanks, you're a clinical. Then when you advocate for yourself and say, I've done X, Y, and Z, they may say, okay, thanks. You have to ask the next part of the question, which is, what do you need me to do differently and better? Where do you see my gaps? Because if you aren't asking, they may not tell you. And if they don't tell you and you don't know what you're working towards, you might as well just like spin yourself down into the ground, right? That is a recipe for staying in the role that you're in.
Oh my gosh, I love that you say that, because I talk about this a lot. And obviously I don't have a clinical background. I have a sales background that came into med devices, like totally opposite of where you're at and what you're doing, but it's the same strategies, right? The same freaking strategies. So I know I told you about my story, so I'm not going to repeat it, because you guys listen to my previous background, because I really want you guys to hear about Kat, because I talked to her for I think almost an hour on Friday, and you and I, oh my gosh, like the way we connected, your story. All right, so here's what I want people to understand. Okay, so obviously I always say when you work for corporate, you have to understand how to play the game. I always say that. Play the freaking game. You know, you got to play the game. I'm sorry. It's just part of the gig. If you don't want to work for a if you don't want to work for corporate, start your own thing, then you don't have to do anything. But if you work for corporate, you got to play the game. Okay, Kat. So how did you land like a sales role? How did you get to the leadership role? And what did that teach you? Like, I know you kind of mentioned a little bit about like, oh, now you got to work with people. Like, it can't just be about you anymore. Now you're honing like a talent, you're almost like a coach, right? So, but how did you basically pursue, okay, I'm done with the sales, I want to pursue leadership? And what are the steps that you take to get there?
Yeah. I wish I could tell you it had been incredibly intentional. And that's part of why I made the move into coaching, because I didn't have the awareness and I didn't have the resources around me to really be career planning. Right. What happened and how I initially made that move was my manager was relocating. And so he was relocating within the company, shifting roles to a different geography, and his role came open. And I had started having those thoughts of like, okay, wanting to be a leader. And I should actually pause myself, because it goes back to, what you were saying about, your vision board for this year and having the word women on it. Because I say that I wasn't intentional, but that's actually not true. I'm shortcutting, and I call my clients out, so I have to call myself out. I'm shortcutting myself on that, because I sat at a national sales meeting maybe 2 years before that and saw our singular female area vice president who was being acknowledged. She was at home on bed rest while right before delivering her baby, excuse me. And she won area director of the year. And I sat there and I told my area director at the time, after that, I said, that's where I want to be. Like, I want to be Julie. And so I had this idea in my head of I wanted to go as far as I could and continue to grow and really be a leader. But what I didn't know were what were the steps to get there, right? And so that's really where I help women and men now, is understanding, okay, you have this pie in the sky goal of where you want to go to. How do we get you there? And how do we reverse engineer that? So what happened, and what happens most often in leadership when you want to make that gap, or not that gap, but the jump, it's a big chasm to make that jump over from going to sales into leadership. Usually you'll have to relocate. You may have to change companies, because the opportunities don't come open very often. Now, because my manager was leaving, I had this opportunity to just really kind of be faced with it and say, all right, well, I was having, I think I shared this, I finished first in the company. So I was having banner success. I had 2 back-to-back president's clubs. My team was really meteoric from a rise standpoint. And it was horrible timing as a sales rep to say, let me go step into a leadership role. Right. And it really required me to do some soul searching when I said, all right, I'm going to put my hand up for this. Because I was leaving a lot on the table financially, and I was leaving a lot behind, because there is a big difference. And you hinted on this a little bit of moving from sales, where you are your own, even though you have a manager, right? But you are your own boss when it comes to like really owning and running your business. You are the one that if you aren't hitting your number, it's on you, right? It's because you're not doing the things, you're not leading your clinical team, you aren't owning your business, you're letting your business run you. You know, we could go into all of those reasons. But when you move into leadership, you are no longer the one who has the control. You have authority, but you don't have control over your business like you do on the territory manager side. So for me, when I looked at it, I said, I don't want to have to relocate if I don't need to. And I love being in Phoenix. I know this business, I know this team well, and I felt confident that I was that right person to take the team as a whole, not just the Phoenix area, but take the team as a whole to that next level. And so I interviewed for the role, ultimately got it. And I'll be super transparent. I cried every day for the first 2 weeks. Every day I was like, what did I just do? I loved my customers. I loved being in the OR. I loved working with patients. And it was a big shift. It was actually harder for me to go from sales into leadership than it was to go from leadership into coaching. Oh, because it was such a change in identity, because you are no longer the one who is owning everything. You are the one influencing and architecting everything, but you have to empower your team to go out and have that ownership. So, making that step and making that move into leadership, I really, I'd love to have a conversation with anyone out there who's considering it. It's such an important and valuable growth moment in your career if it's something that you enjoy. But you have to recognize that you are shedding your skin, right? You are changing your identity and how you work and who are your stakeholders, right? Because when you're a sales rep, you are your customers are your people. But when you're a leader, of course you have customers for the business, right? You got to drive the revenue forward and support your team in that. But your team are your customers. They're your stakeholders. You need their buy-in, their trust, and their commitment to the broader team's success.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I love that you told you guys, if you're not taking notes, take notes. Instagram, I know you're watching. I have a lot of people on Instagram jumping on right now, Kat. And this is really special for me. Again, like for Guided to Work on a Sunday, it's very rare, but I really want people to hear about your story. I know, I'm here. And this episode actually comes out tomorrow. So it's pretty quickly. This is not going to be recorded. So if you guys want to, take notes now or jump back in tomorrow. You're going to hear about her. She's going to be all over my Instagram. Okay. So here's a question for you. All right, Kat. So you went through sales, through leadership, and now you decided it's time for coaching. Like, how did that even idea start in your head? Like, where did it even begin? Because that's just kind of for me, that's kind of a scary of like, okay, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to teach people how to sell.
Yeah. Teach people how to sell, teach people how to lead. Right. It is scary, what's interesting is I spent 15 years in corporate America, and a lot of what I did was help physicians grow their business, whether I was as a sales rep, helping them build connections in the community, as a leader, helping them become a KOL, helping them to understand their impact, their influence. And really what it came down to was just this, again, I know I said this already, so I'm a broken record here, but I looked at it and I was like, what am I going to regret more? Like, I knew I had a long runway from a corporate standpoint, but I just thought, like, what if I bet on myself? And the thing that I think normally comes to people's minds is like, but what if it doesn't work? And that's the wrong question. The question we should be asking ourselves is like, but what if it does?
Right.
And I have to say, so it had been on my heart and on my mind for quite a while. In 2016, I went to a conference called the Massachusetts Conference for Women. And it's this big, like several thousands people, it might have been like 10,000 attendees, big, huge names. I saw Diane von Furstenberg, Issa Rae was there, or Issa Rae, Viola Davis, Meryl Streep. I mean, some big, big names presenting, Gloria Steinem. And I remember I was sitting in Bethany Frankel's talk and just looking at the business that she built on the heels of even, kind of she was starting some of these businesses while she was in Real Housewives. And I thought, God, if she can do it, then so can I. right? And that's what I really want. If you take nothing else from, Gaida and I gabbing today, it's that idea of if you're someplace in your career and you see someone else doing something that inspires you, don't think of it as, God, I wish I could do that. Because that's so often our reaction, especially as women, because we do look to others for that permission or that nod to say, hey, like it's time for you to do that. You have to change that. So catch that thought, cancel it and say, nope, not here for it. And then correct it. And correcting it is looking at someone. So if you look at Gaida and you think, I want to be a creator in the medical device space. If you look at me and think, I want to coach, like whatever it is, if you look at your territory manager and think, I want to do their job, think to yourself, if they can do it, then so can I. Because you have the ability to go out, to learn new skills, to challenge yourself, to do the scary things. And that is what is so powerful and valuable. So to go back to your question, Gaida, because I took us on my soapbox there.
Love it.
But to go back to your question of, why make the move and how did I know? It really came down to looking at what I wanted to do and what I wanted my legacy to be. And I just saw the need, right? I saw all these women whose careers I helped build either directly in the organizations I was in and careers I helped influence, right? I'm not building anyone's career. You all are building your careers yourself, but you have to have the right support and resources. And I thought, you know what, not only like if they can do it, so can I, looking at all these other amazing women that have built coaching businesses and empires empowering other women. But I saw this huge gap because there's nothing in medical device sales. And I've found a few, really strong like female voices now that I've been far more present on LinkedIn, but there's still just for the amount of women in medical device sales, the amount of resources and support and voices advocating for them, it is so disproportional. And so, the rest is still unwritten. I'm only 2 months into fully launching my business. September 18th was my full launch. So not even 2 months. Yeah. And because I took some time to like really be intentional about how he's building it. And, I went to Europe for a month because like, heck, when you leave corporate America, you need a vacation. But what I'm most excited about is just knowing the opportunity and the runway that's ahead. And that for this to be successful, that means I have to help as many women as possible. And so the impact and the lives changed and the financial freedom that can come from that, that's what keeps me going. And so did I blow up a really great career? Absolutely. Would I do it again? Heck yes.
I love, oh my gosh, you guys. Again, you gave me goosebumps. I love this because my whole life, this has always been what I tell people, because I always tell people this, and Kat, you know this, like I'm very careful with, because I have big dreams, big goals, right? And I feel like if you're not dreaming big, if you're not aiming for something high, might as well be dead, right? I mean, might as well be dead. So, but there are people that are going to doubt you. There are people that are going to question you. So I always say this to my listeners: be careful sharing your dreams to non-dreamers. Be careful sharing your beliefs to non-believers. And this is what's cool about this, pretty much like how you and I met. Because I remember the synergy of like you and I talking on the phone for an hour. I'm like, holy crap, like this girl thinks the way I do. And there's nothing more frustrating, and you know this, than sharing your dreams. I'm like, I have this freaking goal. I'm going to quit corporate America. I'm going to start my own business. And then let's talk about this for a second, Kat, because I'm sure you probably, I don't know if you probably share it to people, be like, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. So talk to us about that. Like, how was that journey for you?
Yeah. Most people won't believe. And what you will find when you do anything, and it's not just a change from, corporate America into entrepreneurship, it can be a change in any facet of your life or in your business. There will be naysayers. There will be doubters. There will be plenty of people that you thought were your fans or your friends that instantaneously become your foes. And you have to be ready for that. Now, sales does give us a thick skin, but I also think most salespeople, especially the really good ones, take it to heart. Even though you might have a thick exterior and you're gonna be resilient and find ways to like navigate deals that end and things that go sideways, like you can fix it. But the reality is this is not fixable. This is something where you have to say, I am not for everyone. And my dreams are not for everyone. And Gaida, I love that you're encouraging people not to share them, because for a lot of people, my shift came out of left field because I didn't share this. There were maybe 2 people. I had a direct report who was also female who, we would just wax philosophic about like, well, one day, what if we could do like a yoga and business retreat? We had all of these ideas that we would, spitball together. I had one mentor that I was very clear with about this like final goal, but everyone else, because also I think the challenge that we have, this is more uniquely for women than it is for men, especially in the med tech space. When you start to share ideas that are outside of the scope of your role, people look at you differently. People will say like if I was like, hey, when I retire or in 10 years, I want to own a yoga studio. Oh, well, she's not serious about her work. I don't know if we should put her up for that promotion because she doesn't really want to be here. And so that's where you have to have that caution, who you share with, how you share, or, how much you share, right? But it's a balance, because if you don't share at all and if you hide it in, then your body internalizes that as like, well, I'm ashamed of it. It's something bad. I shouldn't be doing this. And we don't want you to go there. So it's just know the right people. But guided to your question, like, absolutely. I mean, I still have family who's like, so when are you like going back to like get a job? I'm like, you guys, I'm working. Believe it or not, I make money doing this.
You're right.
And it's like, so it's going to be people in your direct circle like that. I'm lucky I have an incredibly supportive partner. I mean, when I really was thinking like, okay, do I do this? And is now the right time? Or do I stay in corporate America? Do I need more, proof of concept and body of work of my success? And he looked at me and he's like, go coach women. That's what you want to do. And it's silly because I'm actually in his office right now. But if I were in my office, I would have all my awards behind me. And it's silly that I would even say like, do I need more proof of concept? Do I need more of a body of work? I've had 15 years of repeatable success time and time and time again. And so to the naysayers, and it's like you see who looks at your profile, who comments on things, who doesn't comment but has really high watch time, like all of those things. It doesn't matter, like if I see that, I like, honestly, it doesn't even register anymore, because the thing that we need to recognize as creators, as people who have big dreams, is that some of these naysayers, the challenges, the things that you feel as outside pressures, some of them we're telling to ourselves. We're telling ourselves narratives that don't necessarily exist. Now, we may be taking up real estate in other people's heads. And if that's the case, then God love them. I hope they find something better to think about, because you should focus on your success, right? And the biggest thing is just recognizing that you aren't for everyone, and you don't need anyone's approval to do what your dreams and hopes and wishes are calling you to do.
Oh my gosh, you guys, if I have a mic right now, I'll totally drop it. Like that, that's such a mic drop moment, by the way. That is so true. And I say this all the time. And I'm glad that you're saying in a different way, but it's the same context. I get the same message. And I love this. And I learned this the hard way, because my whole life, I feel like, why are you explaining yourself? But I'm explaining myself to the wrong people.
Always.
Right? Always. You're trying to explain yourself to people that are non-dreamers. You're trying to explain yourself to people that are non-believers. Of course, they're not going to understand you. So I love this. And I've always believed like attracts like. And I feel like the moment I started shutting down the noises, I'm attracting women that are basically like me, and for the longest time, and this, Kat, it's so easy to feel isolated when you're a dreamer. It's so easy to feel like you're weird. And you mentioned something very, very important. I don't have this in my life right now, but I aspire for it. You mentioned a very supportive partner that's going to like, hey, whatever you do, I support you. Whatever you do, I got you, right? And that's so important. And for me, luckily enough, like I built a circle, and I don't know if you have this. So my circle is super, super tight. Okay, my circle is like, I have this person for this purpose, this person for this purpose. And then, I don't know if I'm sure you do this too. And as women, we kind of have that. And I remember I was at a party last night. I was telling a girl, you just need a good girlfriend that's going to support you no matter what. Like, I've always been like that to my girlfriend. So I'm like, hey, you want to jump off the cliff? Jump off the cliff, like I'll support you, you don't, like, I think like as women, we really need to really stay together and really to support each other, because for the longest time there's so much jealousy, there's so much gossip. All right. And that created this persona of us having to be a man, like having to act like a man, right? So let's talk about that. So you have a partner, okay? How do you balance your being a boss babe, like you got to be masculine, unfortunately, to like coming home to your partner and be like, okay, I got to take care of him, I got to make him feel like the man? How does that work for you guys?
Yeah. I am very lucky. And I think that the thing that I would encourage anyone who's listening to this of like, do I have the right supportive partner, is because, especially like, so Matt, my partner, he and I met 10 years ago. Like we didn't know when I met what my career was going to entail, like what the road was going to be. I got very lucky because his mom was an incredible businesswoman. I just really quick have to give her a shout out because she started as a nurse's aide, moved to a nurse at a hospital in Northern Arizona, worked her way up through her career, and ended her career as the CEO of the hospital. So again, if you don't think things are possible, like channel your inner Sandy Harrius, because she is a force to be reckoned with. So I really have to credit Sandy for Matt's supportive nature, because he grew up in a household where having a strong female figure at home was normal, right? So he is much more probably aware of how to manage like me and my type A than some men would be. Now, you don't have any control actually over your partner and how they were raised. But what you do want to look for and be sure of is that when you enter into a partnership, just like you would do as a business relationship or moving to a new job, you really want to understand it's not just that limerence of like, oh my gosh, they're amazing, I love them. But understand, okay, if we're going to like do this, and Matt and I aren't married, but if you're, like moving towards marriage or long-term committed relationship, like what is that going to look like? And is that person willing to grow and evolve with me? And that was really the commitment Matt and I made to each other, was that willingness to grow and evolve. And you can take that and say it should go to your friendships, right, Gaida? Because what you're talking about of like having supportive women and men in your corners, like that's really important. Your circle, your inner circle. I always say you should have a board of directors, and that board of directors are the people that you can call on when you have things where you're like, I don't know what to do here and I need some insight. And it's someone who's been where you are, who's further along than you are. You've got to have different people that fit different roles. And of course, your partner is a part of that board of directors, because they're the ones who are with you day in and day out. And honestly, like Matt deals with my bullshit. That's the reality of it. And so you need to be sure that you have the right individuals. And it can be scary, right, to make that investment in yourself and commitment to yourself of like, I'm going to prioritize what I need and ask these people to help me. But you have to ask your partner for what they need, or what you need rather, because you can't give them what they need and not also ask for what you need in return. So it really has to be that reciprocity.
Yeah, and that's huge, and there's a reason why they call it like power couples, and like, you see all these people that are thriving, I was married, I'm single for a little bit, and now I'm like, okay, like I like I'm literally like looking for that person, right? But it has to be very special for me to commit to someone. I'm like, you have to be super extra special, because I am out there, and I'm all over social media. I am putting myself out there as I'm kind of crazy, I do a lot of things.
Not
And
crazy.
I need someone.
You're
right.
passionate. You're a multi-passionate. That's the word we're using.
I love that. All right, I love that. I'm not crazy. I'm just first. I always say that. And and you know what I mean. And the way I look at it is like it takes a very special person to get my attention. You have to be super special. And again, like what you said, like you have to be able to communicate, right? So a huge part of sales is communicating. A huge part of leadership is communicating. So let's talk about that, Kat. Like, why do you think communication is so important in every single facets of your life?
Yeah, it really is. I think if there's one skill for everyone that's listening and all of us, I have to work on it. I've been doing this for a long time, but it doesn't mean that I'm perfect. It just means that I've had enough times of not being perfect. I've learned enough to be better, right? I think that's what we have to remind ourselves is like all of those little imperfections and those moments where we're like, that didn't go how I planned. Like those are learning moments, right? And that makes us better for the next round. So yeah, that's like the core of relationship. And relationship is anytime you're in connection and communication with someone. So that's business, that's your team, that's your customer. If you're a leader, those are your reps. If you're a sales rep and you have clinicals that support you or associates, those are who you have to clearly communicate with. And I think to go to your question of like, why is communication so important? It is the only way that we can clarify expectations. And when we have expectations that we don't communicate, all we do is create premeditated resentment, right? That's all that it is. And the reason why it's so important and why I say that is like, Guide, if you had an associate that worked for you and your expectation was that when they run trays, they drop the tray, they take a picture of it and they text it to you, and you have this expectation in your head and you don't tell them that. And so then for weeks on end, they're just dropping trays and there's no issue, but they're dropping the trays off. They're, getting them to the central core where they need to be. Your cases are going without a hitch. But every time a tray gets dropped off, you think to yourself, they didn't send me the picture. Well, of course, because they didn't know.
You didn't know.
And if you communicated that to them, then they could meet you where you are and meet your needs in that way. And now when you communicate, you clearly identify what those expectations are, and you align on your objectives.
Love it.
Because you have to be moving forward, just like a relationship, right? In any business partnership, you have to be moving forward towards the same goal. And if you're not communicating clearly on that goal, then of course you're not going to be moving forward in sync because everyone's going to a different target.
Love. Oh my gosh, you guys. It's funny because I talk about this all the time. Like, you cannot expect the other person to read your mind. Like everybody, oh my gosh.
But we all do. It's so wild. We all do, right? And Guide, I'm curious for you because you've built an incredibly successful career. And I know you said you don't want to go into your background, but if you guys are just listening to Guida for the first time, please go back and listen to her intro episode where she talks about her experience. Because if you think that your world, that what you want to do is too hard, like go look at Guida and see that what she's done, what she's built, how she started her career. It's really, really impressive. And I know that for you, I'm sure you have some just examples and some thoughts on communication and how that's been your defining factor of success.
Oh my gosh, I love that. It's so rare that my guests ask me questions, but I love it because I like to talk about myself. You know what? Yes. I've been through so much in my life. And you guys look at my bio, watch all the, I recorded a lot of podcasts talking about my story, my history. So when I first moved to the US, I didn't speak English. Okay. So I understand it. It's kind of like learning English in Mexico and then moving and then going to Mexico, or learning Spanish and then moving to Mexico. And it's different, right?
It's very different. Yeah.
So the slang is so different. So for me though, my whole life, it's all about survival because that's why my mom taught me, like, you got to adapt, you got to survive. And for me, my whole life's always learning a new language. So that's why when I broke into my device, I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to learn a new language. And now it's easy because I've done this before. All right. So it goes back to communication. It goes back to really being open to adapting and to learning. I feel like a lot of people has this limiting mindset of like, I can't do it. There's no way I can do it. And I call bullshit on that because bullshit. Like, I've been through so much in my life. I've been through so many transitions in my life. When I'm up, I get pulled down and I figure out a way to go back up again, whatever that looks like in my life. Right. But one thing I know was this: if you're not growing, might as well be dead. All right. If you're not growing, might as well be dead. Like, you're gonna experience rejection. You're gonna experience failure. Failure is not a bad thing. Failure just shows you that you're trying something different. Failure, right? And then you listen to every single successful person's story, and they tell you they're not going to tell you everything was great. And then I just became a multi-billionaire because
if they tell you that, you should run the other way and not believe them because they're not being honest with you, and you're not going to learn what you need to there.
Amen and amen. And then you know what? Kat, I love your story. Thank you for that question. Yeah, go back. I record a lot of episodes. Today is episode 25, and I love this. Okay, so we talk about sales to coaching. All right, Kat. So let's talk about your coaching business.
Yeah.
And now is the time. It's your time. Tell us about it. Like, what does it look like? How can they even sign up with you? What do they get out of it? Just tell us more about it.
Awesome. I mean, it has been the most fun business venture I've ever gotten to be a part of. And I feel like I've done some wild things. Like I did a lot of like very, small entrepreneurship things when I was growing up. But the best part about coaching is that I've gotten to make this business whatever I want it to be. So right now, and how I've started the business was different than you see all of these coaches on LinkedIn and on Instagram, like how to get clients, like, how to scale your business, how to have all these different levels of offers. Right now, I have one offer, if you will. And what I do is personalized one-on-one coaching. And so there's an investment there. But what you get with that is that you get me in your pocket. And we have 2 per month, just dedicated coaching calls. And I call them laser coaching calls because we day in, we go deep, but we work quickly. And these are shorter sessions. I never do a full hour with clients. And the reason is this, because if you have a full hour, and I bet if you have a full hour of a one-on-one ever with your manager, you probably spend the first 10 or 15 minutes bullshitting. How are the kids? How are the dogs? And here's the reality. I want to know all those things about you, but I want you to text me those pictures. I want you to give me real-time updates. I don't want to take the time that you're paying me for and the energy that we need to exchange to get you where you want to go, spending it talking about really superfluous things. Can't say that word today. So none of that surface level stuff. We dive straight in, talk about you, your business, your leadership, and your team, what you need to do differently and better to get where you want to go. So the way that starts, and for everyone that's listening, I would love to I do a free 30-minute, your first coaching call is on me. And this is you'll hear people talk about discovery calls where they share, oh, who am I as a coach? And what is my philosophy? I do free coaching calls. I take that free 30 minutes that I'm offering to you, and I'm not going to sell myself. What we're going to do is actually do a real live coaching session. So you can see by the end of it, is this something that you leave with value, right? Those actionable insights, that value add to you and your trajectory. So the first step is if you have any interest in learning about coaching, shoot me a DM on LinkedIn, on Instagram, wherever you are. On both platforms, I'm just at Kat Hurd. So that free coaching call is really where you see the power of unlocking a dedicated resource to you and your growth. So to answer your question of what does the program look like, each program is unique. So I work with my clients on a month-to-month basis. I don't do long contracts. It's not, a $5,000 mastermind that you have to sign up for. Right. I do tell everyone you need to commit at least to 3 months. And the reason you need to do that is you can't see any measurable change in less than 90 days. And now the reality of coaching is that not everyone is a fit for coaching because not everyone wants to do the work. Yep. So I'm very intentional about who I work with. And if we aren't the right fit, I might recommend some other resources or other coaches that are maybe better aligned to what your needs are in that moment. This is not like a money grab or like, let me take all of the clients. This is a very intentional, if you're a female in med tech, or if you are someone who is an ally and an advocate for women in med tech, if you're a leader and you lead women, we should probably work together because I can help you understand how to elevate those women on your team and the men on your team and really just galvanize their careers. But again, all of that said, the coaching as it sits in its container, it's that month-to-month opportunity for you to have a dedicated support, dedicated resource. We do coaching calls. We're always going back and forth on text, on ideas, on, voice notes, all that good stuff. And that would be really the way for people to get started with me. I will, at the start of next year, have a group coaching offer that's coming out. So that'll be announced in early December to give people a runway to sign up. So if you're not ready to make a full commitment to coaching and to investing in yourself, a group coaching opportunity is a great way to just stick your toe in the water and see if that resource is something that you want to invest in.
I love that. I love that. I love that you're not only coaching like salespeople, you're also coaching leaders. And that's huge. That's so unique, guys. Like, no, I've never heard that before. And if you guys don't invest on a mentor, I don't know what you're doing with your life. Like, I have multiple mentors that helps me because my brain gets so freaking crazy of ideas. And my mentor is basically dissects it for me to make sure it makes sense with my brand and what I'm trying to do. All right.
Well, it's that distilling it down, right? If you don't have someone on the outside who's like, hey, peel back on that, let's talk about it. And Guy, I want to double click on something you said, because if you aren't investing in yourself, can I swear on here?
Yes, go
what
for it.
What the hell are you doing with your money?
You can say that,
right?
It's my podcast. We can do whatever we want, girl.
But I just, it's so interesting, and I think this is mostly unique to women, but there's men as well that have this mindset of if you have family, you've certainly invested money in them and their well-being and their success. If you have children, I know that you have invested in T-ball, in coaches, in tutors, in all of those things. And what's silly is that we expect our professional careers to almost be this self-fulfilling prophecy that doesn't need investment or resource or energy poured into it. That your job, like we have this perception that our jobs are going to teach us everything that we know. No, they won't. If you aren't investing in yourself, and here's the thing, it doesn't have to be with me and a really personalized one-on-one coaching program, but you do have to find ways to invest in yourself and your success, because the reality is if you're not investing, no one else is.
Oof. Another mic drop for Kat.
Yeah, that one's a real mic drop, right? And I learned the hard way, but that is what I would say everyone here. And obviously, if they're listening to you, Gaida, I mean, they're investing in themselves by being here and being a part of Device Diaries and taking all of those nuggets of learning. But just don't forget that you have to go out and take that learning into action.
Amen. And the only thing, and I would like to say this, I learned this from my mentor, actually, the only thing that you can control in this world is daily activities. Okay. You can't control the outcome. You don't know what the outcome is going to be. What are you doing every day that's going to lead you to the outcome? Is that an extra email? Is that paying for a coach? Is that signing up for a course? Like, what is it that you're doing every day? All right. All right, Kat, we're getting to almost can you believe it? It's almost an hour. I cannot believe it.
I can't. I feel like we could talk all afternoon. So
we can talk all day. All right. So can you leave my listeners, if you can leave them one advice, what would that be? I know.
Gosh, that's just one. That's so hard. I feel like I'm usually not caught speechless.
Right. One advice, girl.
Yeah,
you get
one advice is just, I'm going to have to, double down on what I just said, which is invest in yourself, right? And I will say, as a part of investing in yourself, is do it scared. Because if you wait to invest in yourself until you feel ready, and that maybe that means applying for a promotion or applying to be a part of a leadership program in your organization, or hell, even booking a free call with me. If you wait to do that until you feel ready, it's too late. And the opportunity and the window of just brilliance that you can have in your career, the more we wait, the more we let fear set in and sit there with us, the more that window closes. So just get out there, invest in yourself, do it scared, but do it anyway. And don't forget to have fun with it.
Yes. Amen, you guys. A freaking man. Guide us. I mean, I don't even have typically I have something to say, but she freaking said it, nailed it. All right. Now let's talk about this, Kat. How can they follow you? How can they find you? How can they message you?
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right. So LinkedIn, Kat Hurd. Pretty simple. It's Hurd. Well, you can see here, Kat with a K. Same thing on Instagram, @Kat Hurd. I will warn you on Instagram, you'll also get a lot of travel content, but you will get business content as well. So if you're a traveler, if you love international travel, follow me there. LinkedIn, nearly daily, I'm sharing video tips on elevating your brand. We're talking this whole next week about personal brand, which is super important. So hop on LinkedIn, hit the follow button, add the bell so you don't miss all of those nuggets, because your personal brand is really your calling card for yourself and for your success. So yeah, shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. on Instagram. Let's get you scheduled for a one-on-one. There are no strings attached to that first coaching call. I would just encourage you. It's a great, really almost springboard point to understand how do you want to start invest in yourself.
And I love that. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yes. So I will make sure to put this on the notes so you guys have it. Perfect. And when I put the reels on, she will be tagged as a collaborator as well. So you guys know her. Please follow her. She has a lot of great content, and it's so rare for me. Again, Gaida never works on Sundays because it's God's day. But the fact that I'm working today, that tells you how important, how special my guest is today. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Device Diaries podcast. Today is episode 25, titled From Sales to Coaching. Thank you so much, Kat, for being here. I really appreciate
you for having me.
Of course. And we'll have you back again because I feel like we need to do another episode about personal branding.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Instagram. You can say hi to my Instagram live.
We'll see you guys later. Thanks for being here.
Yes, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, guys. Thank you.